One. Welcome to Role Play Cafe. We are in the car with Dell. It is RPG a day 2022 August. What did I say it was, Dell? It is now August 17th.
Oh,
The question for you, sir, is past, present, or future? When is your favorite game set?
oh, uh, man. Well, it's pretty much a toss up between the past and the future. I love, I love sci-fi, hard sci-fi, but I also love fantasy. I think I'll have to tilt it toward fantasy.
Hmm.
You know, just because there's more. Well, I don't know. To me, is uh, more just typical gritty situations can occur.
Mm-hmm.
Unless we're talking about fantasy that just gets kind of wild, high magic fantasies. But in the
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
low magic fantasy settings, that's my primary. That's where I
Right.
go to otherwise. But I'll swing back and forth like I love Traveler,
Yeah.
so I don't mind doing that too. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The middle ages to early
See, I think I would
dark
love,
ages.
I think
Yeah.
I would be more of a sci-fi guy if I ever met the perfect sci-fi genre. Um, I love Blade Runner's film noir. Blade Runner's just science fiction film noir from the 30s and 40s
Yeah.
of Hollywood. So I love it. It's the dark noir, uh, kind of like private eye thing with obviously hunting replicants. But so I love the dark, gritty sci-fi. But I haven't really found, and Star Wars had this kind of magical, but to me, Star Wars, when I was a kid, I went, oh, it's a Western with lightsabers and blasters, but it's a Western. They're on the frontier. It's Western. It's got all the Western themes of the 1970s, 60s Hollywood Western. It's
Yeah,
all
it's a space opera.
yes,
It's
space opera, right? Yeah, exactly. But it felt very much to me when I was a kid. It's like, oh, this is like Westerns. I mean, they're not on horses and shit, but it felt much like a Western to me as a kid. And it's been described as like fantasy with lightsabers instead of swords, right? So Star Wars was kind of an easy one as a kid. It's like, oh yeah, that's a pretty cool science fiction I can understand. It's a science fiction that doesn't limit my imagination, but it's not so foreign I don't understand it. But I don't want to place really Star Wars as an IP. I have a real issue with a lot of IP stuff because I don't want to be
yeah.
stuck in the canon of what people think Star Wars is, whether I'm
I
running a
think
game of Star Wars or whether I'm a player in a game of Star Wars, right? So
you're you're
I
right.
have not
You're right
found the
there.
perfect genre. Traveler, I will say, reading my 1980s hardback first edition Traveler book that I got, that definitely had a vibe that was classic to me, like a classic sci-fi, right?
That that's I think the difference is I like to feel like Major Tom in that tin can, and you got that. Even what I appreciate about the games like Call of Cthulhu, there's the frailty of the
Yep,
human.
yep.
And then you've got all these forces that you don't really realize. It's the same way of being in that tin can in
Mm-hmm,
space, and
mm-hmm,
you've got like no one in space can hear you scream.
mm-hmm.
But there's a desolation past that
Yeah.
that you really, as far as exploring it, that's why I say I opt to more of a traditional low fantasy,
Mm-hmm,
pseudo historical uh, setting
mm-hmm.
because there's at least
Yeah.
more things to explore, like ruins that basically are within area that you can understand, like you can walk to or you can ride a horse to. There's there's a way to interface with it. And why
Mm-hmm.
we go to stuff like 2001 and Travelers because we can easily more readily identify with the options that we have in that game.
Right.
But I don't. To me,
Yeah.
I mean, Travelers where I'd go to, but you're right on the IBs for me.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't
and
really credit to them.
yeah, and for me, it is my perfect game or whatever what the question was again. Let me double check it. What is your favorite game set? Uh, so I mean, they're asking, so for me, it's past. Everything I prefer past in everything. Past in my movies. I like watching old movies, old TV shows. But because I am adverse to technology being the forefront of what it is we embrace as human beings, right? So,
Yeah.
for instance, I don't like the modern Sherlock Holmes TV show where they got cell phones and computers and shit like that. See, it's like, you know, I want to see people face these things, and I want to see people solve these riddles, and I want to see. Now, what I do like about Traveler or 2001 is you are a guy in a tin can, and your life's completely dependent on this stuff, right? So that's pretty cool. But
Yeah.
certainly my favorite game is set in the past, and for me, it would be gritty, dangerous, low magic fantasy, right? Very much Dark Age of Man, right? Very much old D&D, how I used to run Moldvay, right? I mean, I love Lord of the Rings, but I didn't have a lot of high. For me, I would Lord of the Rings for me is literature is the it's the granddaddy, right? It sets the pace for all of
Yeah.
what followed, but even it has some high fantasy stuff in it that I'm less interested in, right?
I mean, before that, fantasy was basically Alice in Wonderland,
Yeah.
or you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I grew up with Conan. I mean,
It was
Conan, man,
dreamscapes.
Conan is, Conan was it, man. The pseudo Earth, prehistoric kind of, what is it? I just love the Conan world, the Conan setting, the kind of, Conan is. So for me, it is past, always past, because
Yeah, you can strip a man down to his basics and let him.
and we still have the great themes that all mankind deals with. What is right and wrong? Who decides what's law and order? Who decides? I mean, it's still a fascinating thing for me. Is when you strip away the boundaries, will human beings act with humanity, or will they act like animals? Right? Will they? Where do we draw that line of civilization versus doing the right thing versus? So I just, it's for me, I'm less interested in transhumanism, less interested in far sci-fi, and I'm not saying you can't get those things in sci-fi, but I think it's harder when we're dealing with technology being the forefront of what we deal with. I think at least when it comes to the kind of gaming I like to do. But so there you go. There's Del and I's short conversation trying to answer that question. It is RPG Day 2022, August 17th. Say goodbye, Del. We're going to come back and do another couple of these. Thank you for watching.
Goodbye, Dylan.
Good day.